All right, people are still coming in quite fast. While we let everyone else come in, I think we'll just go around and do some quick introductions of the HPA staff that are here today, and then we'll get started. So welcome everybody. My name is Joanne Snapp. I'm the Director of Health Professions Advising.
Hello everybody, my name is Manisha. I'm the Assistant Director of HPA and a proud alumna, so go Aggies.
Bria?
Hi, my name is Brielle. I'm a staff advisor here at HPA. I will be in the chat room. For any of you that have questions, please feel free to type them. We are here. So glad to have you all.
Karen?
Hi everyone, my name is Karen, also an alumna of Davis. I'll also be helping answer questions in the chat. Feel free to ask any questions that you have. You know, no question is a silly one.
Oh, hey, I am Doug McLemore. I am test prep coordinator and test prep advisor for the HPA, and I can help you with your test prep needs and also just in general advising overall.
All right. So we're at 500 and seem to be going strong. I have a feeling people will continue to come in throughout. So I'm going to go ahead and get started because we always have so much to say and never enough time. So I want to welcome everybody to UC Davis, and I want to welcome you specifically to the College of Biological Sciences. I know that most of you here are CBS majors. If you're not, that's okay. Welcome anyway. We would like to welcome you on behalf of the rest of the HPA staff as well. We actually have 16 members of the HPA staff who are not here today. Some of us are not here today. But we are really excited to spend the next couple of hours with you at orientation. Every year we do orientation with all of the incoming transfer students and first year students. And I will have to say though, this is the first time that we have ever done this like this. And I'm sure this is the first time you've ever done your college orientation like this too. So we're gonna be, I don't wanna say winging it because we've been using Zoom for quite a while now, but we're gonna be doing this a little bit differently. All right. Wow, we jumped up to 577 so fast. Just a minute. All right, so we are going to cover a few things today. I'm going to talk to you for about half an hour, and then we're going to do a student panel. We have some pre-health students who are going to share their experiences with you. Then we're going to open it up to Q&A for everybody. And then we'll spend the last half an hour talking about transfer-specific questions. So we know that there are quite a few transfer students here today, and we want to make sure that you have your specific needs met, because sometimes transfer students are in a different, you are in a different place than first years. And so that's the plan for the day. Feel free to come and go as you please, but the whole day is really built to answer your questions. So I want to first start by giving you sort of an overview of what HPA is and what it does, and maybe what we're not. So I came to Health Professions Advising 6 years ago. I actually came and started Health Professions Advising, so you're very lucky to have this as a resource because 6 years ago it didn't even exist. When we came, I brought a team on with me very quickly. We assess the needs of the campus, and you probably realize that's why you're here at UC Davis, that UC Davis is a jackpot when it comes to pre-health. So we have a medical school, a vet school, a public health program, we have a nursing school, a PA program, clinical lab sciences, all of that on top of being a research institution and being geographically located so close to so many other health profession schools. And so I found it to be absolutely amazing to have so many resources at our fingertips. And with all those resources, we've been able to do some really cool things with our students. Things like hosting summer boot camps where we bring in professionals to do suturing. We're able to take students on field trips all over the state, actually, where we go and visit schools in different health professions. We are able to host the National Pre-Health Conference on our campus, where we bring hundreds of speakers from all over the country to UC Davis. So it's been so much fun being here and being able to bring those services to a very, very large population. So what we do at HPA is we serve all the pre-health populations. People usually ask me, what does it take to be pre-health? Do I need to declare a major? Is there something I sign up for? Being pre-health at UC Davis is just an identity. It's as long as you say, I'd like to pursue veterinary medicine or I'd like to pursue medical school, then you're pre-health. And sometimes that identity is a little fluid. Sometimes we come into college and we're saying, I'm going to go to medical school. I know that 100%. But then something comes up and you realize like, oh my gosh, I actually really love genetic counseling. I love the idea of diagnosing patients and communicating with the doctors about what's going on. And so it's okay if you say, I came in pre-med, but I'm going to switch gears. I'm going to go pre-nursing or pre-genetic counseling or pre-PT. That's a fluid identity. It's okay to think like that. Sometimes people come in and they know they want to work in a health career, but they're not 100% sure which one. I like to call those students exploring students. And I think that's a really healthy and good place to be in life, to just have an open mind about what you want to do. But there are a lot of people who come in and they know from day one, they want to be a dentist. They want to be an OT, and they stick with that over 4 years. And that's great too. I mean, it really doesn't matter. As long as you are intending to do that, our job at HPA is to help you navigate that path. So what we don't do is we're not academic advisors. We do not do 4-year plans in the sense of plugging in all of your major requirements. So let's say you're a cell biology major. You can't come to us and we're not going to say, here are your cell biology requirements and here are your GEs. We won't do that. But what we will do is say, oh, you're pre-med. Okay, here are the courses you need to get into medical school. And this is when you might want to take them. So if you're planning on going straight through, you might want to take your biochem and physio in the spring of your 3rd year, or your spring of your 2nd year, so you can take the MCAT in the summer after your 2nd year if you want to go straight through. Or if you say, well, I'm thinking I'm probably going to take a gap year, that makes more sense for me, then we'll tell you, okay, you probably want to take those courses in your 3rd year so that you can take the MCAT at the end of your 3rd year and apply in your 4th year. So those are the types of things we'll do. We'll sit down with you and we will help you navigate your path, your plan, your timeline into the profession of your choice. We can also talk to you about how to gain experiences, and that's a little complicated right now, especially with everything that's going on with COVID and how hard it is to get into any clinical setting. Students are asking a lot, like, well, how can I get into shadowing? And, you know, unfortunately for a lot of us, the answer is you really can't. It's up to the clinician to let you in, and there's nothing that we can do about COVID happening. But there are lots and lots of things you can do. So if you're really wanting to brainstorm some out-of-the-box ways that you can stay busy during this, at least this first quarter at home, and be doing meaningful things, make an appointment with an advisor. And we've been doing a lot of work this summer brainstorming and finding resources for students in terms of experiences. When it comes time to get ready to apply, getting closer, we have Doug as a resource who offers tons of test prep workshops, whether it's GRE or PCAT or OAT or MCAT. We offer workshops to help you prepare for the test. As you get closer to the end, if you're a transfer student especially, this is actually coming up pretty quick, we're going to start helping you with your application. So your personal statements, your interviews, and everything that goes into that. So we are your one-stop shop for everything related to your health goals, your pre-health goals. And that means you can come to us for just about anything except for making your graduation plan. And you really do want to talk to your academic advisor, at least, you know, in your first couple of quarters at UC Davis, to make sure that everything you have planned in terms of your graduation plan makes sense. And I would encourage you all to do that yourself, to make your own 4-year plan before seeing your advisor. All of you can open up an OASIS account, open up your OASIS and start plugging in your requirements. You can do that work yourself. You don't need an advisor to do that. Start looking it up on the website, plugging in your courses, choosing your GEs, and then seeing an advisor and just running it by them. And they'll say, yeah, that looks great. Or they'll say, maybe you want to move this and this because that makes more sense for the layout of courses. So the most important thing I can share with you is, you know, once you're in college, people aren't going to track you down. Maybe in high school, probably not in community college either, but people might have like sent you things, might have, you know, encouraged you to come and kind of chased you down, made sure you did the right things. In college, it's not like that so much. We offer tons and tons of resources for you. So this is our calendar for our first 3 weeks. And as you can see, we have a lot of things planned to help you get acclimated to college and help you get on your path, whether it's pre-med or pre-dental or pre-vet or still exploring. I'll point out some of these things I really want you to come to. But the most important thing is that you stay connected with us. So we have a Facebook page. We will have an Instagram page very soon. We have a very active newsletter, and so I would encourage you to go to our website and follow us on all the social media and the newsletter so that you can see when things are happening. And then the next step is showing up. I meet so many students who come to all of our stuff over their 4 years of college or their 2 years while they're here. And when they show up in my office to get help with their application, when they're finally ready to apply, I can see a huge difference between the students who came to all of our orientations, who got all of the base information, who understand fundamentally or conceptually what it takes to be successful, compared to someone who just shows up at the last minute wanting help on their application. Those folks, I have to start from the beginning and try to explain in a few appointments conceptually what it is that the schools are wanting from you. And that's really hard. And honestly, there's just no way I can get someone up to speed in that short amount of time. And so I really, really encourage you to start early and start getting the information you need. This is not an intuitive process. This is not something you figure out on your own. We are all here, we get paid to help you navigate this path. And so I would say take advantage of that. And there's no reason not to. I mean, we're not going to say anything to you that's going to harm you. If our intention is to get you in, that's the goal of our program. Everything we say to you is with that goal. So some things I would really encourage you to check out over the next couple of weeks. You can find your specific orientation, and we do orientation specifically for the larger fields. So some of these smaller fields like OT or genetic counseling, we don't do orientations for because there just aren't as many students in those fields. But you can definitely make an appointment with an HPA advisor who can go through everything with you. I would encourage everyone, regardless of what path you're going to go on, to attend the first year class meeting. And this year or this quarter, I'll be doing the presentation for the first year class meeting. And I'm going to go through everything that you need to be worrying about right now as a first year. And I also leave a lot of time for Q&A. If you're pre-med, this Saturday, we're going to be doing a full 9 to 12 orientation. Again, we will tell you everything you want to know. So if you're like, I'm not sure which courses I should be taking, I don't know if I should take Calc 17 or 21, I don't know if I should, when do I start getting experiences, how many hours do I need, which isn't a thing. All these questions that I know you have, we're going to go through that with you. So and we have a transfer specific one. And then the big one that I would encourage you all to attend is the pre-health conference happening on October 17th. And that's open and free. You can register for that now. And that's going to have hundreds of speakers from across the nation covering every single health profession. Right off the bat, this week, as soon as you can, I would really, I want all of you, all 753 of you, to bombard my peer advisors with appointments over the next month. These are 3rd and 4th year students who have just done what you're about to do. And so they know the courses you're about to take, and they've all navigated them successfully. Yeah, I'm sure it wasn't perfect. It was still challenging for them, but they know what you're about to do. And they all have different career paths, and they're trained to help you navigate the paths that you see listed under their names. So I would encourage you to make an appointment with a peer advisor in your first couple of months at least, and start talking to them about what you need to be doing in terms of your timeline and your goals. In addition, go see them and then come to our workshops, and you're going to get all the information you need to be successful. I'm not going to go through prereqs today because I know that we're going to go into this in a lot more detail as you get closer to your orientations. I'm just throwing these up here as like really common ones because people often ask me which classes should I be taking. And so these are the common ones that you will be taking. I do want to emphasize though, if you're here as a CBS major, or if you're not a CBS major and you're thinking you're going to switch into a CBS major, I want to stress to you that your major has nothing to do with whether you're going to be successful on this path. Schools, whether it's vet school or med school or dental school, they do not care at all what your major is. You do not have any advantage if you're a biochem major over an English major, none. Some people might say, well, it's more efficient to be a science major. I can get all this stuff done. And that's kind of true, I suppose, but when you break it down, it doesn't always work out in the best for a lot of people in that way, because sometimes people have natural interests or they're really good at things that are not necessarily related to programming and biochemistry. Like you could love science and you could want to be a doctor, but you might not want to be a biochemist. And the upper division biochemistry courses are going to be designed for people who want to become biochemists. That has nothing to do with becoming a doctor. But what does help you become a doctor is being able to talk to people, being able to connect with people, being able to think, critically think. Where do you learn to critically think? Sometimes you learn that in a philosophy class or an English class or a sociology class. And so you are going to have to take your requirements for your health profession school, no matter what your major is. And you can do that even if you're not a science major. You can use your GEs, you can actually minor in a science, you can major in a non-science, minor in a science, or you can just tack them on as extra classes. There are lots of ways you can do it, but it's not necessary 100% for you to be a science major in order to be successful on this path. And I just want to encourage you to only choose majors because you're really, really interested in the topic. And don't choose a major because you think it's going to get you in. Like if you're like, ooh, that one sounds really good, I'm going to sound really smart if I'm in that major. That's a bad reason to choose a major. Or my parents told me I should be in that major, or my doctor told me I should be in that major. Someone said I should choose that major because that's the major that gets me in. That's not true. That's kind of like a myth that people perpetuate. Is it true more science majors are in these schools? Yeah, not because they prefer them, but because there's just more people who choose science as those majors. But in my experience, having actually worked at the medical school before coming to Davis, I was the director of admissions at a medical school for 4 years, where I saw who got picked and who didn't get picked off the wait list for medical schools. And from what I saw, it was always the non-science majors that got picked off the wait list before the science majors, because schools love diversity. They love people who bring different perspectives to them. And so the more you can choose something that's more authentic to who you are and something you're really good at and you're passionate about, it's going to help your GPA, because if you're good at it, it'll help your GPA. But it just helps them pick people who bring various perspectives. So that's my 2 cents about that. Again, I already talked about this. This is a really big event. This is the largest event in the nation of its kind, and I would strongly recommend that you register for it. We already have 6,000 people signed up, and many of them are not from UC Davis, so I always want my own students at this event. And lastly, I'll just do a quick plug for this program that I run. It's a Saturday program from 9 to 12. If you are pre-med, I would encourage you to come. We split it up half application prep and half MCAT prep. So it's a nice way to get an overview of everything that you need in order to be successful on this journey. All right, so I have 10 minutes left. Manisha, I know we're going to do a Q&A right after this, but is there anything really pressing that you think I should talk about that's coming from the Q&A session?
A lot of students are asking, how do they declare being pre-med or pre-health?
Yeah,
I've
absolutely.
been answering, but that's a good question to bring up.
Yeah, so there isn't, at Davis, there isn't a way to be pre-med. I mean, you are pre-med. If you are saying to yourself, I'm going to go to medical school or I'm going to go to dental school, then you are pre-med or pre-dental. And let's say you want to be a pathologist or a psychiatrist or an OB-GYN. You're not pre-pathology, you're pre-med. You're going to go to medical school. Nobody at Davis can prepare you to become a specialist. So there isn't really a path to become a surgeon. That's not a thing. You have to go to medical school first, and then you would do your general education at medical school, and then you apply to residency in surgery. So you don't actually become a specialist until 4 years after you graduate from Davis. So we aren't in the business of helping you get into a specific path in any of your health professions. We're here just to get you into the door of that school. And so again, there's not a best major for that. There's not anything you need to sign up to do. The best thing you can do is stay connected to HPA and get on all of our social media and our listservs, and that way you know what's happening. And I have found over the years that there are a group of student leaders who always sort of rise to the surface and emerge as pre-health student leaders. I see them as they join conference leadership team, they end up becoming the presidents of the clubs, they end up sometimes working for HPA. They are usually very engaged. They're the ones who come around HPA a lot. They volunteer, they help. And that happens naturally. And it just takes you being engaged and wanting to be around and learn. And so Other than that, there isn't like a box you need to check off. We do have on our website a link that says register for pre-health or as a pre-health, but that's just for us to know who's out there as pre-health. It doesn't indicate anything in the larger system. So you are pre-health if you're here. So congratulations, you made it this far. And we are here to help you as long as you're on that path. And if next week you wake up and you're like, actually, I want to be a lawyer, we'll be like, okay, no problem. And then when you decide you want to be pre-med again, you come right back and we'll be like, hey, welcome back, you're pre-med again. We're here to help you wherever you are on that journey. One thing that you are never going to hear us say, though, is that you're never going to hear us say that you should not be pre-health. So if you come to us, let's say, and you have a really rocky quarter, let's say your first quarter doesn't go quite as well as you thought, and you got a couple C's in your courses and you're feeling pretty bad, and you're asking questions like, can I still do this? Is this still for me? If I can't do chemistry, am I meant to be a doctor? All of that. You will never hear us say you should not be a doctor, a dentist, a nurse, whatever you want to do. That is not our job to tell you that you should or shouldn't or can or can't do something. What we'll do is we'll tell you how to do the thing. So if you come to us and you have C's in your courses and you're struggling and you want to be in a very competitive field, we're going to talk to you about how to get past those C's, right? How can you study better? How can you study smarter? How can you overcome that? Because there's always a way to overcome it. Very rarely is there an absolute dead end to this path. I always joke with people, everything can be fixed with time and money. Now, ideally, you wouldn't have to spend that much more money to fix your grades later in the process. We wouldn't want you to do that. But if you can get things figured out faster, then you can fix your GPA, you can fix your grades with some time. So the faster you figure out you might be having a problem, the faster we can help you. What does that look like? That means in your first and second week, I want you to assume that this is going to be the hardest thing you've ever done in your life. I don't want you to wait until your first test and go, I don't want you to say, well, I'm going to see how my first test goes and I'll figure out how much I need to study. I'm going to tell you right now that if you do that, it is not going to go well and you're going to feel really bad afterwards. So I'm telling you, if you study right now in week 1, as if this is the hardest thing you're ever going to do, what's the worst case scenario? You do too much studying and you get an A on the test? Well, then you'll know that's about how much you have to do to sustain this. I hear that all the time. People are like, well, I'm just going to see how it goes the first midterm, and then I'll figure out my groove. I'll figure out my schedule. That is such a really bad plan. You'll realize after a couple of tests that not all classes are the same. Professors teach things differently, and tests vary by professor in terms of how hard they are. Some professors will say, read this, and it might be on the test. It might not be on the test. Whenever you realize you're having that problem, though, the minute you realize like, oh, this is really hard, I'm really like having a hard time with this, come talk to us. Come talk to anybody, actually. Like, just talk to somebody, talk to an advisor, talk to tutoring. Don't suffer in silence. Don't wait until it gets worse. That's the worst thing you can do. Nobody here at Davis is going to judge you. You're not going to surprise us. You know, we've seen people with pretty bad grades. Nothing's going to surprise us. We're just wanting to help you get back on track.
Joanne, we have quite a few requests just to see where our orientations and events are posted. Would you be able to screen share and show our website either now or in the 30-minute Q&A?
Yeah, absolutely. Let me just bring it up real quick and I can screen share my website. So this is the HPA website. I would encourage all of you to bookmark this because you're probably going to be there quite a bit. Before I show you the events, I just want to show you that all of your health professions are represented here, and you can click on your health professions and come here and find, you know, just about everything you're going to need to navigate this process. In our application prep, we have all the information about gaining experiences and gaining letters of rec and just all kinds of really important information. So again, come check this out. Now in the pre-health programs, that's where you're going to find our events. And we have upcoming events. You can find all the Zoom links. So we do this by week. and you can see all of the events that are happening. And then next week, it'll show you the Facebook event and the Zoom link. And so if you're ever, we only do this about a week out, so you'll have to come back during the week you're wanting to go, and you can always find it here. If you are on Facebook, I would always encourage you to like say you're interested or going to the event. That way you get the reminders and you'll get the links through the Facebook sometimes. And then every Tuesday we have drop-in advising at 2 o'clock. So if you want to chat with someone real quick, they're 15-minute drop-ins. You can pop in, and it's a Zoom, it's live, and we can answer any questions that you have there as well. So that is the website. This is how you subscribe to our newsletter and our Facebook page. And then our calendar, that one I showed you, is on there too. So you can download that or take a picture of it and just have it, you know, handy, so that if you have a few minutes in between classes, you can check out, see what's going on, and pop into something. Any other questions before I hand it back over to Manisha?
Can you quickly speak to if there's any benefit being double majors, major minor?
Yeah, I've seen this question a lot in a couple other places too. So being a double major, there isn't really a true advantage to being a double major. I would just say that, you know, at the end of the day, any of these schools are looking to understand who you are as a person. That is what it all boils down to. I'm going to talk a lot about that at the class meeting. It always boils down to them figuring out, who is this person? So as you make decisions throughout your time in college, you have to think about, what can I do to show people who I am? Now, in order to make those decisions, you first have to know who you are and what you care about. So let's say you have a passion for global health, and there isn't really like a global health major at UC Davis. So you would go through the majors. Let's say you found a major that was called global disease biology. Oh, it has the word global in it, right? It's about biology. It's about, you know, global, we think the world. It also means across species. And then you went and you looked at other majors and you're like, oh, they have like an international relations or community health, or these are minors actually. You go through the major list, you're like, oh, actually anthropology is it's about cultures. It's about cultures all over the world. You can put things together to create a set of knowledge like that you possess, right? That makes you an expert on the thing that you're really passionate about. Let's say you really love children. You can minor in education, which puts you in the classrooms at UC Davis and lets you intern with children. You could minor in human development. There's just so many possibilities. You can put together whatever you want in terms of your academic plan so that the world understands who you are. Do you get bonus points if you double major? Absolutely not. It's not like, oh, this person double majored, so they're going to be a better doctor one day than this person who didn't double major. That's not exactly how it works. It's really about doing things that show them what you care about. So if you didn't double major, let's say you majored in sociology because you really wanted to understand what affects health outside of physiology and science. You want to understand the social determinants of health. So you majored in sociology. And in addition to that, you did an internship at a student-run clinic where you actually got to see how those social determinants of health affect people. And then let's say you did some research in the public health program. So you were working with a faculty member doing research on the effects of stress on maternal health. So now you have research in public health, you have your sociology degree, you did an internship in the student-run clinic where you saw it happen. What is that school going to understand about you? Maybe you minored in public health. That school's going to understand that you really care about solving community problems as a physician. It could be a dentist, it could be anybody, right? A PA, nursing. If that's true, if that's really who you are and that's what your career goal is, then it would make sense to piece those things together so that that's how the world understands you. But each of you has something in you that is really, really specific to your goals, your passion. And I want you to really think hard about who you are, why you are who you are. So think about your background, think about where you're coming from. And then how does that relate to what you want to do in your future? Is there a connection between where you came from and what you want to do? And so you have to think about where you're going. What do you want to do as your career? Not just I want to be a doctor, but like, what do you want to do as a doctor? And then how can you show them that you're prepared to do that, that you care about them? And you choose things, you choose majors, you choose minors, you choose activities, you choose classes, you do all the things that build you up to be that kind of person. That is a really fast way for me to explain how you're going to successfully navigate this path. Does that answer the question, Manisha?
Yes, it does.
All right, so I don't want to cut into the panel time too much, but I'll be back for the Q&A too with all the other staff. So I'll hand it over to Manisha now. I'll let you all hear from the students. And then right after this, we'll be answering more of your questions.
Joanne, you still have your screen share on.
Oh, my bad.
And would you be able to give video access to our guests? So
Shivani, Isabel.
Shivani, Obina, Isabel, Bethany, and Ari. So as Joanne gives you screen access, if you all can open up or turn on your videos so our students can see you. And thank you all for being here. I want to be respectful of the time that these students are giving us. So I have a few questions just so they can help you understand what it's like to be pre-med at Davis. You can continue to post questions in the Q&A, and if we have time at the end of a few questions that I have for them, we'll take them. If any of the panelists can stick around for the general Q&A, we'll try to continue answering questions. But one by one, and I'll call on you so that we stay a little bit organized. Can you please share your current year in school and major? And I'll start with you, Obina.
So I actually just graduated, and my major was global disease biology.
And what are you pursuing?
Medicine. So I'm a pre-health, pre-med.
Thank you. Shivani?
Just like Obina, I just graduated this summer as well, and I graduated with biological sciences major, and I'm also pursuing pre-med.
Thank you. Isabel?
Hi, I'm a fourth year biopsychology major. I'm pursuing pre-nursing actually. I also advise here at HPA for pre-nursing and pre-T if you need help with that.
Thank you. And Ari?
I'm a third year animal science major and global disease biology minor, and I am pursuing veterinary medicine.
Thank you. And Bethany?
Sorry. Hi, I'm Bethany. I'm a fourth year and I'm also a global disease biology major, and I will be pursuing dentistry.
Thank you. So in thinking about your first year at UC Davis, what were some positives and challenges you experienced? Again, I'll start with you, Obina.
Some of the positives that I experienced, I guess, just the amount of people. Like again, Davis is a huge school, so I guess it made me more, I guess, it made me more, open to I guess being in like bigger relationships. Some of the negatives that I guess or the challenges that came with coming to Davis was the fact that going from, because I'm a transfer student as well, so I came from a community college. So coming from a community college to a UC was extremely difficult, going from the semester system to the quarter system.
Thank you. And Shivani?
Some of the positive things that I experienced as my first year was finding a great group of friends. I was with them forever. I mean, not forever, but like for next 4 years. And then other thing that I experienced that was positive was being able to join an being able to join an organization that I actually enjoyed doing. I was part of BIPSHE from the first year, and being able to do that while like stressing about midterm was pretty good to have that at the back. Some of the negatives or like challenges that I faced was coming directly from high school to you know, UC Davis, quarterly system, getting used to it midterm. And then also coming from home to here, I live around like 5 hours from here. So it was pretty tough to like manage that as well.
Thank you. Isabel?
Yeah, so I think the biggest positive for me coming to Davis was like I have a lot more independence and freedom to try a lot of different things at Davis. I think I went to a lot of like club events and activities like the first couple of weeks. Um, I tried things I never did before, like I tried Japanese drumming, I tried like different martial arts, like clubs. I know things are different now, but I believe there's a resource fair coming up too if you want to explore like the different clubs and student orgs we have on campus. Um, for the biggest challenge, I would say it was probably making friends. I'm naturally shy around people at first, but I feel like, well, what worked for me is just putting myself out there, leaving my comfort zone, pushing myself to meet people even though I didn't really want to, because that's how I found my friend group too. Like, just happened by chance. I met them through a group of people I already knew. And also, yeah, the transition from high school to Davis was hard. I wasn't really used to the quarter system. I came from a semester system as well. Uh, and grading is pretty different for some classes. Like I was used to having like a little bit of cushion for my high school grades compared to some of my university courses because some of them were more dependent on just like the tests for your grading. And I didn't have that cushion of like homework or like participation. And also just having good study habits. So yeah.
Great. And Ari?
I say that one of my positives is that the classes that we take at Davis for the animal science department are really, really cool. It was really nice to have some classes that directly like correlated to my passions. So that kind of like sparked my interest in education again, because I feel like in high school you take a lot of classes that you're not so interested in. And in college you can kind of pick and choose, you know, based on your major, what classes you take. So it was really cool to take classes that were directly correlated to my passions. But some consequences I think were definitely, like Isabel mentioned, study habits are much different from high school compared to college, and you really need to get used to that fast-paced environment. And it can be a real to get over that. And then especially, you know, moving away from home, having to kind of start over, even though, you know, you had 18 years wherever you were or less, of building friends, and now you have to do it all over again, and that can be really challenging. So mental health is always like a big issue, you know, with like incoming freshmen living in the dorms and, you know, gaining all this new independence you don't really know what to do with yet. So there definitely are positives and consequences, but overall it was amazing.
Thanks. And then Bethany.
So some positives that I had was definitely joining clubs. I know it's like different and it's not in person, but a lot of the clubs are still doing like Zoom links and all that. And as a freshman, I really feel like the upperclassmen like really care for you and they like really want you to join their club. So they'll like really like want you to join, and so you'll have like so much fun like learning from these people and like getting involved. And so that was definitely a huge highlight of my freshman year. But a challenge about this was that because I was having so much fun, it was academically a little bit rough for me. But to be honest, like I didn't know how to study, and like I don't know why, but college you're kind of learning the same thing as when you were learning in high school, but for some reason it's so much harder. And it's probably because you're with like a lot of people who are smart, and you are learning in a new environment, so it requires you to really change your habits and everything. So learning how to do that was like a big like roller coaster for me, but you learn how to do it in the end, and so you don't have to like don't like stress if like it's like one bad grade, because you have so many opportunities to bring it up. And so yeah, those are some of my positives and challenges.
Great. And then I'm going to stick with you, Bethany, and go in reverse order this time. But thinking about your experiences thus far, what are maybe one or two resources that you utilized, whether academic or personal or extracurricular, that helped you?
So I used the Student Academic Success Center. So it's basic. So science classes are pretty hard, and I think especially when you're in like a really big class, like lecture hall is like 500 people, and that's like crazy big. But for like the Student Academic Success Center, they have like, it's like a lot smaller of a class, or like there's like specific tutors that can really help you. And so I utilize that a lot. And actually, like, because you generally the same amount of people, or like the same people go to these like centers, or like, I'm pretty sure they have like online version of it now, but because it's like generally the same people, you actually got to bond with them, and like you talk about how hard these classes are, or like you kind of get tips of like what was like on well, what you like, tips on like how to solve problems, or even like if they went to like the professor's office hours. But like for me, I didn't have the guts to go to the office hours yet, but they really like kind of tell you like, oh, the professor like really like talked about this one topic a lot, so it probably is going to be on the exam. And you just develop these bonds with like these people in the tutoring center. So I would highly recommend that. Even if you're not struggling, it's still fun to go to. And another one that I went to is HPA. The pre-health, like pre-dental track is pretty hard, or like it can be mentally taxing, but like talking to like the advisors like really help. Like I've cried there before, and I've like been happy there before. Like it's just really nice to be able to talk to these advisors and like these older people who can like calm you down, or like to set you on the right track, and so you're not as lost. So those are the two resources that I really used a lot, and I still use now. So I would highly recommend it.
Thanks, Bethany. So Ari, again, one or two resources that have helped you on your journey.
I would say academically, the most important academic resource I used my first and second year would definitely be my academic advisors and the AATC. My academic advisor has been such a support system for me, just because we have a personal relationship now, because I go to her office like every month to get help. And I feel like your academic advisors or your peer advisors for your major are a great resource to take the stress off of, what classes you need to take, because you don't need to do all of that on your own. I feel like a lot of freshmen think that. There are so many ways to, figure out like a 4-year plan or things like that, or just a 2-year plan, depending on what major you're in. So academic advisors are amazing. And then I also use the AATC for chemistry and economics. They have, little workshops that you can take along with chemistry with, much shorter, similar to what Bethany said, and they're amazing resources, and I take them every single time I have to take a chemistry or economics course, because it really helps me better understand the material. And then extracurricularly, my favorite resource was that I joined Greek Life. I don't know if anyone also did, but I joined Greek Life to make sure that like I kept up being extroverted, because I love being social and keeping up that aspect. And if you ever think that you're struggling to find friends, registration for Greek Life is still open, so go check that out.
Thank you. Isabel?
Yeah, I'm gonna bounce off the AATC, and also you can find the tutoring services online. Just search up like AATC UC Davis. I'm sure you can find like Zoom link and also the hours, but they have it for chemistry, chemistry, math, physics, and writing. My first year, I used it a lot for math. They used to have it at the dorms and also South Hall, but they have like an undergraduate student who also took the class, and they did really, really well in the class. And they were all like able to offer perspective and how to approach problems. And like Bethany mentioned too, like there would also be students who are in the same boat as you in the same class, and who probably have gone to office hours and have a better understanding of what the professor expects for your midterms. I also utilized TA office hours, but it wasn't really until my winter quarter, because I was also shy. And I didn't realize how important it was until I saw my fall quarter grades, and I was like, I should go to office hours. Review sessions also, some TAs host review sessions right before your midterms or your finals. Your classmates, especially if you're in discussion, actually Bethany and I were in the same Math 17A discussion. That's how we got to know each other. And I think I asked her for help a few times too. Get your contact info. Also, if you have labs, your lab mates, your group mates, they can help you with post labs, pre-labs. I also want to add, just like this is a tip I like to do during office hours, sometimes it just helps to like sit, even if you don't have questions, and just hear like what other students have to ask the TA or the professor, It helps me because I could like verify what I knew and what I didn't know. If there was something I was missing, the TA would like add on to that essentially. But yeah.
And Shivani?
Yeah, same thing like them. I've also utilized office hours a lot. Whenever I had a question, I would just go to the professor and just ask him any question. Usually to me, that clears up some of the content and makes me like understand it. Other thing I rarely use, just like Bethany, HPA, it's always there. If you have even a little bit of question, they can answer. I've also gone to a lot of workshops, and then like, med prep, and then the boot camp. Basically, like, they're there to answer any of the questions that you have for career. So that's one thing I also utilize as well.
And Obina, as our transfer student today as well, what helped you?
Yeah, so in both high school and at my CC, I actually never used office hours. I was actually doing very, very well. It wasn't until Davis where it kind of, I guess, like shaked up the whole entire momentum. So actually, office hours was something that was very, very imperative in my success, just because again, like you build connections with the professor as well as you get that one-on-one. So that definitely helps a lot. And as you guys will come to know, because I know you guys are incoming freshmen, a lot of the science classes get very, very tedious. Something that I did on a more personal level was that I added a minor. So I added a minor in Spanish, just to like switch up the little flow and momentum from the heavy science classes into more classes that I like. So I, of course, with my science classes like OChem and everything, I was also taking some cool Spanish classes too.
Right. And just to clarify, our students today are both first years and incoming transfer students.
Okay.
And then I'm going to stick with you, Obina. That way I don't lose my order. But knowing what you know now, what might be one thing you might have done differently your first year at Davis?
Yeah. First year Davis, I think I would have been more open to being extroverted. That was a problem that I had both at my CC as well as in high school, is that I was more individualistic, that I more kept to myself, and I was more just, again, self-centered around, doing things around my own. So I think opening up to be more extroverted, opening up to, kind of letting down that ego, just being more open to getting help. That was one thing that I had like the biggest problem. So, just dropping the ego and being more open to help.
Thank you. Shivani?
I think one thing I would do differently is make sure, go explore stuff on campus. So to me, when I started, I was only focused on like school and then BIPSHE. I didn't really like try to find out what I really wanted to do. I mean, like BIPSHE was one of that, but like I wish like I explored around things that I could do, even like in second and third and fourth year. That's one thing I really regret not doing on campus. So for sure, explore on whatever is there on campus.
Isabel?
I think I would have tried to study a lot more. I spent a little too much time trying to like find myself out and socialize in the first few weeks. So finding that good like social life and school balance is important. I would also put myself out there more and network, because people you meet can help you learn and discover experiences that you want to try. It can help you discover like how you would go about differently when studying or preparing for your health profession school. And the people you meet can also act as references for like interviews and gaining experiences.
Thank you. Ari?
Yeah, I think one thing that I would have done differently for sure is I would have taken advantage of my professors a lot more. The animal science department on Davis is the best there is. So the professors are the best that there are. So it's really important, I think, if you're going into ANS 1 or ANS 2 your first year, or maybe ANS 42 or 41, if you're a transfer, those professors are world-renowned researchers, and I really wish that I would have, gone to their office hours and created more personal connections with them, because their labs are top-notch, and it would have been absolutely amazing to be a part of their research programs. And a lot of them are really approachable and really kind. So if you go up to them and say, hey, I'm looking for some research opportunities, or I have a question on this, or, do you know anything about this on campus? They're more than likely to direct you to someone or some lab that, you're interested in. They're great resources, and I definitely wish I took better advantage of them.
Thank you. And then Bethany.
So something that I would have done is if like, I think a lot of the times I like didn't ask for help and I didn't know how to, and I was like kind of shy about it. Or even if I didn't know how to ask, or even if I wasn't struggling, just asking the professors or asking like HPA and asking people who have like gone through a little bit more college than you have, on like their advice and just like their support. And I would have talked to professors and asked them like what their expectations are and how to do well in class. Or like I would have, if I was struggling with keeping my grades up, I would ask people who are older than me, who probably are juggling a lot of like extracurriculars and school. I would have like asked them for help because they've experienced it. And like you don't necessarily want to like, you want to be smart about it, right? So you want to learn from other people's mistakes so you don't make as many mistakes, because that's just like what it's like, you know. It's so I would have studied more, but on top of that, I would have also asked for help more and not be shy about it. Yeah.
Thank you. So something before I jump into the next question that I'm generally hearing is trying to make the most of your first year. If you're shy, push yourself out of your comfort zone and get involved. But if you're overly extroverted, balance your time because you are here to be in school, right? And so that's kind of the message, is try new things, but be mindful of this is the quarter system, right? Kind of jumping from there, kind of two unrelated questions, because we did have a question in the chat room. One from me is, one piece of advice. I know you've been giving advice all along, but the one piece of advice you wish you had from an older student that you would like to give our incoming first year and transfer students. And then those of you who are in the College of CVS, what student clubs were you in? This is from the audience. What student club were you in? But again, I think any of you can share maybe one or two. You've already been mentioning student clubs that you've been in that you enjoyed the most. And we will start with you again, Obina.
One piece of advice, I guess, would be bouncing off of like what you were saying, is finding that balance, like, again, not being too extroverted, but also being extroverted enough. Just finding that perfect balance, just because, again, it translates imperatively to your overall success. And then as far as clubs and everything that I was in, I was part of a Imani clinic. I'm not sure if that's considered a club, but that was definitely a clinic. And again, that translated so much to like my overall happiness, because again, it was a time outside of school to get to be like, to see like the clinical setting, which is something I love. So it was very, very cool. And that's really about it.
Thank you, Obina. Shivani?
I think one advice that I would give to like, my pre-med peers is make sure that when you are doing like some, tests and everything, like don't try to memorize it, try to understand the content. That's one thing that's really important. Like when you come back to like studying for MCAT, it's really hard to like relearn things that you have already learned it in past, even though like you already understand it. So really important to like just understand every content. Don't try to memorize anything. That's one thing I did. I try to memorize everything and get the greatest grade I can just by memorizing. Don't do that, please. One thing that I was part of in my undergrad was BIPSHI. It's like a student-run clinic, but it's like mainly like a club. But like Obina, like it was my time outside of school just to like de-stress myself, seeing the clinical setting and just seeing the patients there too. Like it really brought a smile on my face and really like de-stressed me from all the midterm and things.
Thank you, Shivani. Isabel?
I would in part maybe get organized. So for me, like I had a virtual calendar. I use Google Calendar a lot to keep track of like my classes, events that are coming up, due dates. I also used an actual physical calendar. I had a planner. I really use my phone's reminder app if you guys have an iPhone, and also alarms. I was involved with some Filipino American clubs on campus. I was curious because I'm pretty Americanized. I don't really know a lot or like as much like in depth about my culture compared to others. And it was a good outlet too for me because it wasn't, I wasn't just studying, I was also like learning about my culture. We got to eat a lot of good food. We got to do a lot of events. There's a big little program, so you can also find a mentor through there. But yeah.
Thank you. Ari?
If I had to give one piece of advice to incoming students, it'd probably be to make sure that you enjoy the college experience, because especially as STEM and pre-health majors, we tend to get really wrapped up in future careers, classes, internships, jobs, or whatever, and we really never stop to look around and enjoy the moment. And I can say that I'm a completely different person than when I was a freshman to being a third year now, and I've made so many discoveries about myself. And it's really about, college is not just about developing your career, but it's also about developing you. This is the first time that you've ever been independent from your family. This is all you. You're an adult now, and doing adult things. And it really, you need to take a second to make sure that you look around and pay attention to yourself. And also, don't ever feel guilty for taking time for yourself in college. You have to take time for yourself. These classes are going to demand more than you, and never feel guilty to just take a second and do something that you love, to reinvigorate your day and not just be drowning in schoolwork. Never feel guilty for that. In regards to clubs on campus that I'm in, I am in Delta Gamma, so I'm in Greek life here, but I'm also a part of the Vet Aid Club. I'm also part of 27 Heartbeats on campus. I'm a part of the Golden Key International Honor Society. And also I work at a clinic, and I have been working at a animal hospital for the past 4 years. So getting involved, off campus, but also on campus is really important to develop what you really love.
Thank you. And Bethany?
So for me, one piece of advice would be to focus on the bigger picture. Like, you are here to grow as a person, and like your career in the future is just part of who you are. It's not who you are, So like for me, I didn't really know what I wanted to do, but something that I knew I wanted to do was to like use my strengths and use my experiences to help other people. So one way I did that was by joining also a student-run clinic. It's called Paul Hom Asian Clinic, and I'm a translator for like Cantonese to English between patients and doctors. And so that's something that like I'm really passionate about. I'm really passionate about like the underserved community in Sacramento, specifically those that are Asian. So although it's not related to like dentistry, like specifically, but it's something that I really care about, is like the Asian community and serving those people and playing on those strengths. So I joined that, and then I also joined a fellowship because I think that was something that's really important to me too. And through that, I found like a really good support system through my highs and my lows of freshman year. And so if you're like, you need community, like you can't navigate college alone. So finding your community is just part of the bigger picture of who you want to be in the future. So yeah, that's probably my advice.
Thank you. We are at 11, so I really appreciate the 5 of you taking time out of your day. I hope you as the audience have found some advice. These are students that have navigated, have tried, I don't want to say failed, but learned from their challenges, and took a few minutes to kind of share that with you, kind of that one piece of thing that I wish somebody had told me, business, right? So thank you all for being here today. Really appreciate it. And I know you continue to utilize HPA services as you move along your journey. So as some of you have said, Shivani and Ovina, we're here to get you in to your professional goals, but your time at Davis is also for you to grow as a human being, right? As a future healthcare professional, what I've heard from all of our panelists today, grow and get to know who you're going to serve one day. And that's the best thing that you can do to yourself. So thank you again. I'm going to give the applause for all of our audience. You were wonderful. Joanne, I'm going to turn it back over to you for some general Q&A, and then our last 30 minutes will be devoted to our transfer students.
All right, thank you. I've been feverishly answering those questions in that Q&A. Those are some great questions, and there's quite a lot of them. So yeah, feel free, HPA staff, to keep answering the questions, and you all keep asking the questions. Some of the themes that I'm seeing in some of the questions is just generally like, how do I figure out what exactly I want to do? And I answered that question multiple times. And I would say some people figure it out immediately, like they come into college knowing, and some people might think they know and then they realize something else as they go along. I like to talk about how life is not necessarily linear, and that you have no idea what you're going to see over the course of your 4 years that might reinforce what you think already, or might throw you off completely. And when you're thrown off completely, like I've had a lot of students who come in and they're pre-med, and then when they get into their internships in the hospital, they come back to me and they're really confused, and they say, well, I thought I wanted to be a doctor, but actually when I saw the nurses working, I realized that what I want to do every day is actually much more like nursing. And I don't know what to do now, because I've been telling everybody I want to be pre-med, and they all think I'm going to be a doctor, but I really don't think that's the best thing for me. That doesn't mean you're a failure if you've said to the world you want to be a doctor and then you realize that you're going to be much happier doing something different. It means you're being, you're smart, you're being mature, you're thinking about the rest of your life and getting up and going to work every day. This is a career. Like, this is not a sort of like checking off a box in life, like, oh, I did the hardest thing possible, I became a doctor, and now I've reached success. No, you actually got to live that life for another 30, 40, 50 years. And so you really want to make sure that the thing you choose is something that when you get up and go to work every day, it's something you're going to enjoy. So I would just encourage you to, like, don't put yourself under a timeline in terms of figuring out what that is. If I said to you that you had to find your significant other, your life partner by the time you graduate, someone you have to live the rest of your life with no escape, you wouldn't put yourself under that pressure, right? That's way too much pressure to find that one thing. So don't do the same thing with your career. If it happens naturally and you figure out what you want to do for the rest of your life while you're in college, that's fantastic. Then you can plan and get going on it. But sometimes it does not happen that easily, or it doesn't happen that fast, and that's perfectly okay too. The best way to figure it out, get involved. Get out there and start figuring out what different careers require of you. So do you want to stand on your feet all day? Do you like to work at a computer? Do you enjoy talking to a lot of people? Are you really not into like touching people or using needles, or you don't like blood so much? Do you like educating people? All of these components are going to appear in some fields and not others. And so figuring out what it is you want from a career, and then doing your research and talking to people and talking to professionals in that career to figure out, is that what you do? Like, a lot of people say, well, I really want to build relationships and with patients. Well, in medicine, you spend about 50% of your day. You spend about 50% of your day at a computer, and the average time that physicians spend with patients is 8 to 10 minutes. So when you're talking about building relationships with people, that oftentimes does not happen in medicine. That's more of a nursing field, or even a PA field, or a lot of other fields where you're going to spend a lot more time with patients. So just understanding those things early, figuring that out on your own, and realizing what it is that you want from your career, and then finding the right fit. And that, again, I just really want to encourage you to not pressure yourself to realize, like, to find that immediately. You have plenty of time. All of these professions have this similar prereqs. You can start with taking similar things like chemistry or biology. And if you're not sure, you can start with like psychology, or take your GEs first. No pressure to get everything done in the first year. If you are a CBS major, you're going to have to take some of those classes. But if you realize, like, I want to be a nurse instead of a doctor, and you realize I don't need physics, I don't need OChem, it's not necessary to stay in a science major and take OChem and physics if your career doesn't require it. That's for some people, a lot of suffering when it's not necessary. So let's open it up to some questions. Manisha, do you want to read some questions out for me?
Yeah, there's been a few questions in terms of grades and test scores. So could you speak to that upward trend, grades, low test scores, low grades?
Yep. I saw that question as well when it came to, like, what GPA do I need to be successful? There are like for us to say that this isn't a competitive route would be misleading you. But to say to you that every person who gets in must have a 3.6 or a 3.7 or above is actually misleading you as well. The average for most schools hover around a 3.6 to a 3.7. That's an average for most health professions in general. Not all, like there are some that are far less than that. But the average GPA of students in the College of Biological Sciences across the board is 3.3. So if the average for our students in science majors is 3.3, and the average for students who get in is 3.6, and we know many students get in, I'm here to tell you that many people get into health profession schools between a 3.3 and a 3.6. Many get in below a 3.3. It definitely drops off. There's less people who get in below a 3.3. But I don't want you to ever think that the only way you can be successful is if you have a 3.8 or a 3.9. If someone tells you that, I promise you that they simply don't know. They don't know what they're talking about. That is so far from the truth. And how do I know this? Well, a lot of people at UC Davis, you're going to find this to be true very quickly. A lot of people at UC Davis think they have the magic, right? They think they have the secret to getting into any of these things. So you'll go to club meetings and you'll have other club members telling you how to be successful at doing this. You may have classmates who will suddenly know that they're admissions experts. They've had years of experience in admissions. They can tell you how to do this, right? You'll have PIs down the road, or other people will tell you. None of those people actually have access to the data that HPA has. So we see the applicant list. We can pull it from the MCAS. We see who applies, who gets in, and everything about them. We can see their GPAs, their majors, all the stuff. So every single year we can see who's getting into med school and who's not getting into med school. And every single year, and even before I came to Davis, I can vouch for this, there are people who have 3.9s and 3.8 GPAs, 520 MCATs, 80th percentile GRE scores, whatever it is, who are not getting in. They just don't get in anywhere. And so I usually ask people, why do you think that is? And people will say back to me, oh, it's probably because they didn't do enough experiences. They probably just studied all the time and they didn't do enough stuff. Well, in my experience, really smart people tend to know that they need to do some things. So really smart people tend to go out and they tend to find experiences. That's not really a problem. I very rarely meet a college student who doesn't do anything. So if it's not the grades and it's not the experiences, what else could it be that would keep someone with such high numbers out of a school? Any ideas? Well, personal statement, letters of rec, what do those things reveal about people? Your character, right? So who you are, the attributes, your personality, your competencies, the skills and the things you bring to the table. So much of this process is actually not centered around your grades. It's actually centered around who you are. The grades are extremely important because the grades will say to a school, this person can handle dental school. This person can handle vet school. You need them to believe that you can handle it. And being able to prove you can handle it is not always found in your GPA. It's actually found in your upward trend. It's found in your last 2 years of college. So if you come in and you have a rocky beginning, you have a rocky chemistry or biology experience, it's not usually the biology and chemistry they're looking at. It's usually what happens in your last 2 years of college that they're looking at. And for our transfers, don't panic. If you have a rocky first quarter, you have to bounce back a little bit faster. But you're 2 years older. You'll be able to do that much faster. So don't get hung up only on numbers. If you focus only on numbers and you ask yourself questions like, what do dental schools want to see, or what do med schools want to see, and you seek out opportunities that you think will only make you competitive, and you're not asking questions like, why am I doing this? Why do I care about this? Does it show the world what I care about? You will become very quickly what I call a checklist applicant. That means you've checked off all the boxes. You checked off the GPA box, you checked off all the research and interning and community service, but you didn't think about why you're doing any of it. The only goal you had in life was to get it. And that cannot be your end goal. That can't be it. There are too many people with that goal. So your goal has to be figuring out what you care about and how do you show the world what you care about. They're going to ask you, why are you doing this, right? You can't say, I want to do this because I just need to get in. Like, that's not an answer. You need to know why. And helping people and loving science is not enough. So there has to be some big picture reason why you want to do this. So I would really encourage you to think about that why now. It's hard. It's a really hard answer. I have applicants who still struggle with that answer. But you've got to figure out some reason that comes from your past and ties with your future. And then let every decision in between there guide that decision, or guide things. Any other questions like that? Did I answer the question? So the short answer is do the best you can. Always and forever. Always do the best you can. And whatever that ends up being, then we will figure out how to make you a strong applicant with what you bring to the table. You could have a 3.9 GPA and you have no concept of why you're doing this. It's very hard to help you.
Can you speak to, are there any must-have experiences?
Yes. The only must-have experience, well, there's two. So you must have some concept of why or what you're getting yourself into. So if you're pre-dental or pre-vet or pre-med or pre-OT, whatever it is, you have to have seen someone do that. Does that have to happen in shadowing? Absolutely not. A lot of people see their intended career in a lot of different places, whether it be from their own health experiences, through an internship in the HRI system. Sometimes people work in emergency rooms as a scribe or a farm tech or all kinds of things. So it's not that shadowing is the only way to figure out what your career is about. So you have to know what you're getting yourself into, and they want to see that, and and that actually comes across in your writing as well. And also community service. I don't know of any health profession that doesn't value community service. And there are some medical schools that actually calculate community service hours and will screen people based on community service. I have never heard of a med school that calculates research hours and screens people on research hours, but I have heard them do that for community service. So research is really valuable to most schools because at some point you're going to do research, whether it's public health research or binge research, you will do research before it's over. So they like to know that you have some concept of how to do research. But there aren't a certain number of hours of research you have to accumulate to be competitive. Sometimes people do research for 1 quarter and then they realize, I hate this. I really hate being in a lab, and then they quit, and that's perfectly fine. You should always quit something if you absolutely hate doing it. You should not do things just to look a certain way, right? You need to do what you love. So, but I will say across the board, you're going into a field where you're going to have to give up a lot of your time for other people. You're going to give up many holidays. You're going to give up so much of your free time, your weekends, your evenings, for the purpose of serving others. So community service says a lot about you. And I would say at this point, since you can't do really much of anything in a clinical setting right now because it's so hard with COVID, you can find other ways that you can do community service. So what does that look like? You could do work for a crisis hotline. You can Google a crisis hotline in your area and see if anybody is looking for crisis hotline workers. You can do that from your home. You could look at food banks. You can look at homeless shelters. You can look at schools to see if they need anybody for tutors. You could look for other organizations that serve maybe refugees or newly arrived immigrants or other people who just need help. It could be all kinds of groups, right? There are lots of marginalized groups in America that need help. You could maybe create your own community service. If you know that there's a problem in your community, start looking for solutions to some of the problems in your communities. These do not need to be health related. You don't have to go open up a free clinic in your community to be competitive. You could do anything, right? You can collect diapers and hand them out to low-income mothers. It doesn't matter. It's all helpful. So you got to track what you do, and if you create something on your own, you'll talk about that really. I mean, I'm sure you're going to be very passionate about it because it's your baby, right? You created it. It's okay to do things like that. So right now I say jump into community service and try not to stress about not having a lot of clinical experience just because it's going to be hard to get into anything. You can talk to health professionals. I think reaching out to health professionals in your area and asking to have informational interviews, going to the pre-health conference, collecting names, connecting, visit many schools. So like look at the health profession schools in your field and see who's having information sessions and go to those and learn about the schools. You could be doing a lot of research right now about schools. We actually put together a spreadsheet that has a lot of experiences that our peer advisors at HPA are very familiar with. And so when you make your appointment with an HPA advisor, they'll be able to give you some ideas about some experiences that you can do. You should track all of your experiences on an Excel sheet and just keep track of your hours. And you don't have to sign, like nothing has to be signed or anything. You don't have to verify anything. It's really based on your, you know, it's an honor system. Except for a handful of health professions like PT, they do require a signed when you're working with a PT, but not for things like community service.
If I were interested in research, does it have to be in the sciences?
No, not at all. A lot of people do psychology research. You could do research in public health. You could do research at the vet school. I mean, there's so many things you can do. It doesn't, like I have some students who do research in philosophy. A couple of our applicants, actually, one of our peer advisors, Noreen, she's a med student at the UC Davis Med School. She went and got a master's degree in religious studies in England before going to med school. And she did all of her work in philosophy and religious studies. You know, you do whatever you feel like doing. You shouldn't ever feel like you have to do anything. There is a website that lists community service, but it's more specific to Davis and Sacramento. And I can definitely post that page. Give me just a moment. But if you're not local, it pretty much only has the local community service opportunities. But yeah, let me get that up here for you.
And we've had I know you touched upon it in the beginning, Joanne, but we've had a few questions related to majors again. Do I have to be a specific major? Does one major look better than the other, depending on the health profession I'm selecting?
Yeah, I just posted the community service database in the chat. Honestly, your major isn't going to have any effect on whether you get into any school or not. People assume that, you know, having a biology major or NPB major or something like that is going to look good, but you're going to take the same classes as someone who is a different major. You're all taking biology, chemistry, physics, OChem, biochem, physio, genetics. You're all taking them. So an A as a biology major isn't better than an A as an English major in biology. If you both took the class and you got an A, you're both going to be, your science GPAs are going to be considered the same. So let's say hypothetically you have a biology major who took biochem, physics, OChem, genetics, physio, biochem, and you got you know, all A's in those, and the English major took the same one and got all A's in those. But then you go into your upper div courses. So let's say you love to write and you're an English major and you're taking upper div writing courses and literature courses, you're probably going to get straight A's in those courses. Now you got A's in your sciences, so your science GPA is going to be good. And now you have A's in your major classes, so now your GPA is going to be really high. The other thing about the English major is they can take their science classes and spread them out. They're not in a rush to get all those basic ones done in the first 2 years. So now they have a high overall GPA and a high science GPA. If you take a science major, you do have to squeeze them in the first 2 to 3 years because you got to get into your upper div sciences. So now your upper div sciences, some people love plant biology, some people love evolution and ecology, and if you love it, you're going to do great and you'll also get A's. But if you chose the major because you thought it sounded good and you don't really care about any of it, when you go and you take plant biology and ecology and evolution, you are not going to do as well as you could have because honestly, you just don't love it. And when you don't love something, you just tend to not do as well in it. At Davis, a B is a 3.0. Most people don't want to have a 3.0 when they apply to medical school or any of these schools. And so, you might be thinking, well, I can be an A and B student. Well, if you start getting a bunch of B's in your classes, now your GPA starts going down. So you really, really want to choose a major that you're going to love and you're going to excel in, because at the end of the day, the GPA is important. I'm not trying to, I just said that you don't need to have a 3.8, 3.9, but like I said, a B is a 3.0, and you're not going to get straight A's. You're going to get some B's. So you need to really balance out your A's and your B's so that you end up somewhere around a 3.5. So I don't really, it doesn't matter to anyone on this earth what your major is. Maybe your parents care, but they're about it. Nobody else cares what your major is. All anyone will ever tell you is choose a major that you love, because the most important thing is doing well in it. And so you've got to figure that out for yourself. No one is going to tell you what the best major is for med school. Well, I'm sure lots of people will tell you what they think, but there's no truth to that. It's whatever you think helps define yourself to the world and what you love.
So kind of bouncing off that a little bit, is it impressive to medical schools or health professional schools if I take a bunch of science classes just to be impressive?
Well, at some point in your 4 years of college, usually in your last couple of quarters, maybe, you are probably going to want to take 3 science classes at the same time. And you can do that 1 or 2 times. You don't need to do that every single quarter to prove anything. If you take 3 science classes, science and math, let's say you take biochem and calc in your first quarter at Davis, you're not proving anything to anybody. You're going to struggle, most of you will, and you might end up with some B's, which is only going to start you off your college education with a lower GPA. So all you proved is that now you have a GPA, you have to work on building back up for the rest of the time. Whereas if you had taken it slow and given each of these really hard classes the amount of time and energy they require, then you might have saved yourself a lower GPA. By the time you're finished, whether you're transfer or first year, you have plenty of time. By the time you get towards the end, in your second to last quarter usually, people will take 3 science classes at the same time and do well in them in an effort to show that they can handle a graduate level science program. But that is not something that any of you need to necessarily worry about right this minute. I would not stress about taking 3 classes at once until you've demonstrated that you can take 2 classes at once and get A's in them. Let's take 1 class and get an A in it. Let's start there. Let's take 1 science class, get an A in it, and then let's try 2. I do see a question about science GPA versus non-science. There are 2 GPA schools will screen for. Your overall undergrad GPA will include every single class you've ever taken. So if you're a transfer student, all of your coursework from the CC and any coursework you might have taken before that goes into your overall undergrad GPA. If you're an incoming first year and you had taken some community college coursework in high school, all of those courses will go into your application GPA. Let's say you have some courses out in the universe that didn't transfer to Davis. Those are going to go into your application GPA. So your Davis GPA oftentimes is irrelevant. The schools never see your transcripts. They never look at your actual Davis transcripts. They only look at the GPA that you're going to input on your application, which is going to include every class from every school you ever attended. And so your application GPA, whenever that time comes, is oftentimes different than your Davis GPA. It's not too slow to start off with, well, not only 2 courses. I don't know if you mean 2 courses or 2 science courses. You should definitely be enrolled in a full load if you're going to school full time for financial aid reasons and other reasons. Most students take around 15 units, but they do not need to all be science. I strongly recommend against that. I'm answering Brina's question.
When should I take the test?
Oh, like MCAT or DAT, things like that?
Whatever test I need to take.
Yeah. So tests are usually good for 3 years. And so you would want to create a timeline that makes sense based on when you're thinking you want to start school. I'm going to give you a really typical timeline. I would say this is the timeline that, 80% of our students are in. So students will come in, whether they're first year or transfer. And if you're a first year, your first 2 years, you're just spreading out your stuff, similar to what transfers did at a community college. You're taking biochem, physics, OChem. And then in your 3rd year, you take biochem, physiology, genetics, and then at the end of your third year, in the summer after your third year, you take the test. So whether that's the DAT, the MCAT, the GRE, whatever it is, you take that in the summer after your third year. You come back in the fall, we know your score now. In the fall, you're doing experiences. If you need to retake the test, you're restudying for it. But usually we just are finishing out our experiences in the fall. In January, we start prepping your application. So you start coming to HPA weekly. We will start working on your personal statement, your experiences, writing them, and your letters of rec and all of that. So this is your fourth year. So your fourth year, you've already taken your test in your third year, and you will be prepping your app in your fourth year. You graduate in June, but we've been prepping your app the whole year, and then you submit your app in June or July. Some of you, your apps will open as early as April. Some of your apps will open in June. It just depends on the profession. But most people submit in June or July. So at that point, you've graduated, you just submitted your application. You're going to do what are called secondary applications, which is a lot of writing. It's a lot of essays. You have to write many, many essays. And then you're going to do interviews in the fall. So you graduated, you get a job, you're going to go to interviews. You used to travel all over the country, but now you probably do them on Zoom, who knows? Maybe not in 4 years or 2 years. And then you get accepted and you start school 1 year after that. So most schools start in July or August. So you graduate in June, 1 year later you would start school. Now that 1 year off is not really off. You're working, you're doing your application. You're going to be very, very busy. So that's what most people do. If you say, I don't want to do that, I really would like to interview and figure out where I'm going during my fourth year, then you would need to take the test earlier so that you can be ready to apply in the summer after your third year. It all depends on what you want, but doing it that way means that you have to take the test earlier than the summer after your third year. You're going to have to take your test either in the summer after your second year or during your third year. And I'm telling you, it's pretty hard to study for a test and take it while you're also taking a full load of courses and preparing for the test. So you shouldn't be taking a class that you need on the test while you're preparing to take the test. That doesn't make a lot of sense, right? You need to have the content in your head when you study for the test. So transfers, I would strongly recommend that you take the test the summer after your third year. So your first year at UC Davis, if you finished your biochem, physics, OChem, you would take biochem, either Biz 105 or Biz 102, 103, depending on your major. You could take physio, you could take genetics, and then plan to take the MCAT the summer after your third year or your first year at UC Davis.
What if I'm not ready? What if, is there any downside of me taking gap year or years?
Here's the lovely thing about health profession schools. They love students who have life experience. So the older you are, the more likely it is you're going to be successful. You cannot be too old to apply. Many, many students in these schools are in their 30s. So if you're thinking, well, I need to rush and I'm going to get out of here in 3 years and I'm going to apply right after and go straight through, that plan actually does not work well for most people. I actually don't know anyone who that's worked out well for. Most of those people end up having to reapply a second time because they're just too young. They don't have enough experience to do that. So I would say some of my most successful applicants over my time here at Davis are the ones that graduate, take time off, study for the test after they graduate, and they work full time. So they're working and they're studying for the test. They take the test in that first year, and then they apply 1 year after they graduate. They have 1 year's worth of life experience. They have a test that they studied really well for because they weren't distracted by college. And then they apply 1 year later, and then they start a year after that. So they take 2 gap years. Nothing wrong with that. That actually is a very strategic plan. But I understand why most people wouldn't want to do that. But I'm just saying the ones that do that it tends to work out very well for them.
11:30, Joanne.
Yeah, so I think we are out of time for the Q&A. We are going to switch gears now and we're going to talk all transfer. So if you're a transfer student, we hope you'll stick around. I'm going to talk to you about the transfer experience here at UC Davis. If you're not a transfer student and you're a first year, I want to thank you so much for joining us today. Again, check out our calendar. There are many orientations and meetings we're going to be having for everyone in the next, well, forever, really. We do them all the time. So check out our calendar and be sure to come to some of those, and we will all see you very, very soon. So thank you, first years. Have a great rest of your orientation, and we will hang out with the transfers for another half an hour. All right, transfer. So just waiting to see how many of you there are. We're really excited to have this time with you because we know that many of you have some pretty unique questions and unique concerns about your specific journey. And so I want to start off by saying to our transfer students, the number one thing that I've always heard from transfers when we talk to them is this feeling of being behind. I hear a lot of transfers who say, I feel like I'm behind. I feel like there are many things that I didn't get to do that I haven't done yet. I feel like I just feel this immense pressure that I have a lot to do in a very short amount of time. And on some level, there's always pressure, right? Like you're right. You only have 2 years at UC Davis, and there is a lot to get done in 2 years. But I also want to reassure you that that's not necessary. Like you don't necessarily have to get everything done in 2 years. And so it is very possible for you to get it all done, but sometimes that works out really, really well. And sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it just doesn't work. And we try really hard to squeeze everything in and push and try to make it all work. And sometimes it just doesn't because there's just a lot. And that's not because you did anything wrong. That's not because you messed up somehow or there's something wrong with you. It's just because it is what it is. Like it's just a really hard thing you're trying to do, and there's just a lot of things you have to get done. And so I just want to really encourage you to take a deep breath right now, maybe take a step back and just think about this big picture. You want to be a health professional, and you all will. That's not an issue. When you become a health professional, whether it's in 1 year or 2 years or 3 years or even 4 years, will it make any difference in 30 years? Will it make any difference? Will anyone ever ask you, hey, after you transferred to UC Davis, did you graduate in 2 years or 3 years? Will anyone ever ask you, did you take 1 year off after you graduated, or did you go straight through? Like on the larger, in the larger scheme of things, like actually nobody really cares when you do this. This timeline that we've created for ourselves about when things have to be done is actually self-imposed most of the time. It's because someone told you or you've decided for yourself that this is the way it has to be done. And if you don't do it this way, that means you failed in some way or you messed up. And I just want to really encourage you right now at the very beginning to evaluate maybe that plan and give yourself a break. Like, it's okay if it doesn't work out exactly the way that you thought it was going to work out. And it doesn't mean anything about you. If you change your plans, you're not a failure, nothing messed up. It's just at the end of the day, sometimes you have to switch things up a little bit to get to where you want to go. And being flexible but persistent towards your goal is what's going to help you be successful. So I want to start with that little spiel because I find that is the bulk of the conversation I have with transfers throughout my time here is just helping people understand that there's not a right or wrong way to get to where you want to go. It's just, you got to get there. And some people, it takes a little bit longer, and that's okay. So let's start with, are there any really, really pressing questions that transfers have that we can start off with? And if not, I can just keep talking, but I want to make sure I get your questions answered. I see that there's quite a few of you still here in the room, about 180. So feel free to ask any questions.
You can post them in the Q&A. We're still there responding, and we'll push out the questions to Joanne to address to everyone.
I can just keep talking then. And then as you have questions, please post them. So in most cases, transfer students have most of their basic sciences done. So most of you are going to be coming in with biology, chemistry, physics, and OChem already completed. If you happen to be in a situation where that's not true and you have not completed all of those courses, I would really, really recommend that you make an appointment with an advisor as soon as possible so that you can start to lay out what that timeline looks like for you, because it is going to be a little bit more crunched for you as a science major, because you're going to be expected to jump right into your upper div coursework pretty soon. And so we're going to have to like really think about that timeline a little bit. And so if that's true, but you don't have those all done, then make an appointment as soon as possible, like in the next couple of weeks, so you can figure that out. But let's say you have your bio, your chem, your physics, and your OChem finished, and you're coming in. So most of you would be taking in the next year, your third year, biochemistry, if you're a science major, physiology, whether it's NPB 110C or NPB 101 or something else. If you're not, I guess if NPB is not required. If you have the option to take NPB 101 though, I would recommend doing it. I think that you might come across some physio on the test in your future, and you're going to need physio for your health profession, as in you're going to take it in your future. And other courses you might want to consider taking if it's not required already for your major, which most of you would be genetics, Biz 101. And then as we go further down, there are some other courses that are not necessarily going to appear on your test, but are just good for health professions like microbiology, immunology, anatomy. So those courses are not necessarily going to help you in terms of the test necessarily, but some of them are going to be required for certain health professions. Like for example, nursing and PA requires anatomy and micro. Medical school does not. Dental school a lot of schools actually like to see those two courses. So it really does vary drastically by school and by profession. There isn't going to be like, here is a set of requirements that all of you need to do. That's never going to happen. There is always going to be a varied list of requirements by schools. I see a lot of people asking questions about experiences, but I want to just quickly run through the rest of this timeline. So one thing I want to address is if you are going to take biochemistry, there's sort of this idea out there that you need to take Biz 102 and 103 if you are not a biochem major or a pharm chem major. There's actually no reason that you need to take Biz 102 and 103 unless you're going towards a career that requires 2 quarters of biochem. In my experience, I don't know of any health professions that require 2 quarters of biochem. It's true that you could find some random schools out there that do, but the majority of our students who do Biz 105, which is 1 quarter of biochem, actually do just fine. I know a lot of students who are at UCSF Med School, UCF Dental School, all over the country who took Biz 105. It's not going to hold you back in any way. And I will say one of the professors who teaches Biz 105, Ken Hilt, he actually teaches to the MCAT. So if you're pre-med, he's already looked at the test and he teaches exactly what you need on the test. So there are some advantages to just getting biochem done sooner so that you can move on with your studying for the test if that's what you want. All right, so let's hit some of these questions. I see a lot of stuff coming in. Manisha, do you see anything that you think would be really important for everyone?
So a couple questions in terms of if I'm not applying until after graduation, does HPA or are there resources to help me? And that's one of the considerations of when I apply.
Yeah, well, HPA does serve alumni, so I don't think you need to worry about that so much. You can definitely use our services even after you graduate, and that's because we know that people don't graduate right after, or don't apply right after they graduate. We actually encourage people to take time off because we know it makes you a better applicant. So it would be really hypocritical of us to say, hey, take all this time, but then we're going to cut you off. We're never going to help you again. So that's not the case. You can definitely make appointments with HPA forever until you get in. No need to stress about that.
So if I'm spreading out my class, I took most of my science classes at community college. It may be a couple of years before I take the MCAT. Does this put me at a disadvantage?
I'm sorry, what's the
So I finished, The issue is, it's been a while by the time I start studying for the MCAT, when I took my initial courses. How can I prepare?
Has it been like 4 or 5 years?
By the time I would take it, it might be.
Well, I mean, it sounds like it might be a non-traditional path, but normally you transfer to Davis right after you finish your first 2 years at CC. So you would have just taken biochem, physics, OChem in your first 2 years, and you would finish up your requirements for the test in your third year, this year, and then you would take the test at the end of your third year. So that's the typical timeline for most people who do this. I wouldn't say you're at any more disadvantage than anybody else, because that's how most people do the timeline. You take bio and chem and physics and OChem in your first 2 years, biochem, physiogenetics in your third year, and you need to take your test. Now, if you took it 5 or 6 years ago, then yeah, I think if you forgot biochemistry, physics, and OChem because you took it 5 years ago, there's a possibility that you might want to like sit in on some of those classes. You can audit classes, and that way you can get a refresher on some of that, or you might have to start studying sooner so you can start to relearn some of those courses. But I think that really depends. It sounds like a very person-specific problem. So we're definitely happy to help you. You can make an appointment with Doug, and he can kind of talk through what you might want to do if you don't feel like you have a good foundation in biochem, physics, and OChem for a test.
Can you talk a little bit about being pre-med and an international student?
Yeah, so being an international student in the US for any health profession, actually not just for pre-med, is going to pose a little bit more of a challenge for you. Most schools will set aside 1 to 4 seats, depends on the school, for international students. So that'd be out of a class of 120, they'll give international students 1 to 4 seats to those. And people applying to medical school obviously are coming from across the country. So you're competing with international students who attended every university in America. And so it does become extremely competitive in that way. So while I normally would say to a typical or an American citizen student, I would say you need to have, at least a 3.5. For an international student, I would say you probably want to have a little bit higher than a 3.6 or a 3.7, just because it is far more competitive for an international student than a non-international student. I would also encourage you to look at what the private schools that take international students are looking for. So there are going to be more private schools that take international than state schools. And so really studying those schools, figuring out who those schools are, make your school list early, and try to just figure out like what can you do for the schools that you want to apply to be a good fit for them. So that's kind of contrary to what I normally tell people, but that's for a far more competitive route.
What if I take the MCAT twice?
That's okay. Lots of people take the MCAT twice. I mean, nobody wants to take the MCAT twice, but if you have to, you have to. I mean, sometimes people take the MCAT when they're trying to do too much. That's a really common problem. Some people say they're going to go straight through, so they try to take the MCAT in the spring quarter before they apply. And I would say 90% of the time that does not work out well. So people end up getting scores that they don't like, and then they end up not applying and they retake it later that summer. And they're on a typical gap year timeline at that point. If you take it and you don't like your score, oftentimes that changes your timeline, but not always. You just have to regroup. You have to find out when you have time to study, because you can't just do the same thing again. You have to redo, you have to figure out what you didn't do well the first time. Sometimes that means you need more content review. Sometimes it means you just need a better approach. If you're trying to do too much, you just might need to do some very targeted focused studying. But that's going to vary by person.
As a transfer student, do I have time to explore other career paths?
As long as you're alive, you have time to explore. I wouldn't apply to a career you're going to do for the rest of your life until you're sure that that's what you want to do. And I would say if you get to the end of your college degree and you still are not 100% sure that you want to be anything specific, I would encourage you to get a job in healthcare. So get either a license in something that you can get quickly and get into a hospital setting, work as an EMT or a scribe or something where you can just work around people and start to realize what you like and what you don't like in a career. because you might realize that you said you wanted to help people, but actually you don't like talking to people that much. And if that's true, there are a lot of careers where you can still be in healthcare and you don't have to deal with people. Clinical lab sciences is a field where you get to diagnose, it's pathology basically, but you don't have to go to med school for that. You can just get a certification in clinical lab sciences and make a lot of money and be in healthcare diagnosing people, but you never have to deal with the whole process of med school. So there are lots of things like that where you just need to figure out what you like and what you don't like and what you want to do. And if you haven't figured that out by the time you graduate, that's okay. Take a couple years and work, make some money, and figure it out and then decide. I would say it's better to take your time and have the right career for you than get into a career, be $200,000 or $300,000 in debt and realize you hate your life.
Can getting an advanced degree, a master's degree, help me prove that I can handle rigor?
Yeah, sometimes people get master's degrees in an attempt to enhance their academics. Doing something like a public health degree doesn't necessarily prove that you can do a science-based doctoral program, because a master's degree in public health is more social sciences. But if, let's say, you did a master's degree in physiology or anatomy or something like that, then yes, absolutely, that can show that you can handle it. Lots of people get master's degrees before they go on.
Does it hurt me that I took my science classes at community college?
The only profession where it could possibly come back and hurt you is dental. Dental schools are the only ones that have any type of quota, where some schools are going to say that they only want a certain percentage of your prereqs done at a community college. But that's not even, like, I've known many transfer students actually who got into dental school. It's not 100%, it's not across the board. It's just a thing that you need to be aware of, that there are some schools out there that have a bias or actually requirements about community college. It's not a thing at medical schools. What you wouldn't want to do is not take any science courses at UC Davis. So if you took all of your basic sciences at a CC and you come to Davis, you would want to take some upper div courses here to show that you can handle the rigor of a four-year university. And if you do that, then it won't be an issue. If you only took your classes at CC and you didn't take any classes here, which are all science majors, so I assume that's not going to happen. And then let's say you went back and you took like anatomy, physio, and micro at a community college and you didn't take them here, they would wonder, like, what are you doing? Why are you trying to avoid taking classes at UC Davis? That would be a major red flag for them.
Can we come back to how would medical schools view me taking the MCAT multiple times?
Yep, so when they see that someone took the MCAT and got a bad score, they will oftentimes wonder, like, what happened, right? Was it that you weren't prepared? Are you not a good test taker? Like, what's the issue here? When someone takes it again, then what are your options? Your test score could go way up, your test score could be the same, or your test score can go down. It's a risk. And so if you're going to take it again, you want to make sure that you change the conditions so that your score doesn't go down. That would make you feel really bad, right? If your score went down or even stayed the same. I've seen people whose scores stay the same and they get into med school. It's not the end of the world. But if you're going to do it, you definitely want your score to raise. So you would want to make sure you change things up. And again, like meeting with Doug and talking about how to do that would be really helpful at that point. But let's say you took it once and you were like, well, taking it twice looks really bad, but I have a score that's kind of mediocre, but I'm going to go ahead and apply anyway. They're still going to see your mediocre score. And they're going to think, well, why did this person think that they could get into med school with this score? You know, why didn't they at least try again? That's sort of like a judgment issue, right? Like if you apply with a low score. If you take it again and you only go up a point or two, they're going to say, well, they applied and they did go up a point or two, but what else does that say about you if you take it more than once? What other qualities about you does it show if you take it more than once? Are they good qualities or bad qualities? Well, I'll give you the answer because this is not really a platform to participate. They're going to say that, okay, this person took it once, they didn't get a good score, they took it again. That shows persistence. That shows that they knew that their score wasn't very good the first time, but they didn't give up. They weren't going to accept that their score wasn't strong enough. They're going to try again. And if the second score isn't amazing either, at least they tried, right? At least they didn't just accept that their lowest score was the best that they could do. Almost always they're going to appreciate the fact that you tried again. So anytime you fail at something, you should always keep trying. I don't think, if you didn't get into med school your first time and then you're like, well, I'm just gonna go do something else. I'm gonna go into business. I'm gonna go to law school. I would say you probably didn't really want to be a doctor to begin with, because if you quit after just trying one time and failing at something one time, then I don't know, I just don't really believe that you really want that. And I think that's what happens when you apply to med school more than once. You actually get a lot of bonus points the second time because they know wow, this person really wants this. They're persistent, they regroup, they pulled it back together, they did it again, and most of the time the reapplicants are successful on the second try. So I wouldn't want you to quit after just one try unless you really decide you don't want to do it. And you would retake the MCAT a second time if you need to, after consulting an advisor to decide what's the best route to go. So it depends on a lot of things. I don't think there's an easy way to answer that. I think you need to really consider what your score is, how you approach the test, what the problems were, and how much rehabilitation you need in terms of MCAT prep.
So can I have prereqs in progress at the time of my application when I submit for?
Yeah, so are we talking about med school or different, all the health professions? Yes, yeah, you can generally have, you can have your English requirement not done if you have a school that requires public speaking or psychology. Yes, you can be taking those. Nursing schools do require that you have your prereqs done by the time you hit submit, so that's different. But if we're talking about a school that requires a test that has the content on it, like dental school or medical school, you would be taking the prereqs for the test, actually, not the school. So if you're taking, let's say biochem or something, you would actually need to have that done for the test, not because the school requires it, if that makes sense. But yes, generally you need your prereqs done by the time you start school. So if you're missing an English class, if you didn't take 2 semesters of English in your CC and you come here and you need 2 quarters, then you would, if you don't finish it, you could technically go back and take English at a CC. That's not a big deal. You just wouldn't want to go back and take more science classes after you've been here.
And I think I'll add just a piece to that. Such physician's assistant and physical therapy, yes, you can have up to 3 prereqs in progress, but most schools do indicate that they'll give priority to applicants that have all their prereqs completed. So at that point, it's a personal choice. Coming back to the MCAT one more time, how would I take the MCAT now? Is it remote versus in person? And how soon should I plan a retake if I didn't do so well the first time?
The MCAT is online right now, and I have no idea for how long it will be that way. I am guessing until most of states are clear of COVID. Doug, have you heard that any states are offering the MCAT in person yet?
There are no online MCATs. All the
Not
MCATs
online.
are,
I don't mean online. I mean, what am I talking about? I'm thinking GRE.
Yeah,
I just
you're
answered the
thinking
GRE question.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So all the MCATs are in person. I'm sorry. I was just talking about GRE with somebody. But in terms of whether it's going to be the 5 hours or the 7-hour version, I don't know when that one's going back to normal.
My understanding is that it's going back to normal starting next year in January. We will find out for sure mid-October when they release the schedule for next year.
Okay. What was the other part of that question?
How soon should I plan a retake if I didn't do so well the first time?
I think you should meet with Doug and talk about what didn't go well. And you should come up with a plan to make sure that you address whatever the issues were. Jumping right back into the MCAT if you're not ready isn't going to produce a different result. So it really does depend. I don't think there's an easy answer to that.
And can you revisit the difference between Biz 105 and Biz 102, 103?
Yep. So 102 and 103 are like a comprehensive biochem. They're comprehensive biochem courses. It's like everything you would need if you were trying to be a biochemist. Biz 105 is sort of like what you need for test, sort of like what you need for health professions. It's more of a condensed version of biochem. It has less content, but it does go pretty fast. So it's still a lot of content, but in 1 quarter. What I've heard students say is that it is, I think Karen would like to answer this question live. Karen, is that true?
You're answering it.
Oh, okay. I just saw something pop up that said Karen would like to answer it. So the students who I have talked to who have taken Biz 105, what they've said is that it does move fast, it is hard, but for them, they chose to do that because they wanted to get it done faster. Like they wanted that requirement done so that they can start studying for the MCAT for whatever reason, like it worked better with their timeline. Some people just don't want to take 2 quarters of biochem. I mean, it's kind of personal. Some people actually like biochem and they want to take the 2 quarters of it, or if you're a biochem major, you have to take the 2 quarters of it. It really depends on your major too. But I've known many people who've done Biz 105 and they're, like I said, they were very successful on the test. I don't think it holds them back in terms of the test, and I don't think it holds them back in terms of getting in anywhere. So I just want to pose that as an option for you, because if you do feel like your timeline is a little crunched and you do need biochem, under your belt before you take a test, doing it in 1 quarter helps you move along a little faster.
So what happens if I don't get into medical school? And I'm going to add the first time I apply.
Yeah, so we would talk and we would identify what areas of weakness you have. If you're, we would hopefully be talking way before that too. So if we had any weaknesses, so if the benefit of using HPA is let's say you're applying to med school and we already identified your weakness. Then during your gap year, we would actually be having you do things to address your weakness. Like if I suspect that you don't have enough of something to get into med school, but you still want to apply, I'm still going to help you and encourage you, but I'm going to say to you, you might want to do something about this in case you don't get in, so that when you go to reapply, you're ready to go. So that's the benefit of a gap year, is you can address any weaknesses in your app so that if it doesn't work out, you're ready to jump right back in. If you don't do it that way and you apply and then you wait till the end and you're like, oh my gosh, I didn't get in. Now what do? I'm going to talk to an HPA advisor. And then they're like, well, you didn't get in probably because of X, Y, and Z. Then you have to take a whole year off, do those things, and then reapply. And now you have 2 more years you're waiting. So it's better to talk to people and know what your weaknesses are before you apply. What would be even better is if you don't apply when you have weaknesses. It would be better if you addressed your weaknesses before you apply so that you get in on your first try. That would be ideal, right?
So we have about 2 minutes left. Are there any final questions anyone wants to pose? This isn't the end. Obviously, you can continue.
Not the last time you'll see us.
You will see us. Hopefully, we are there, part of your journey. There's quite a few orientations still coming up, as well as virtual visits with HPA and all the programming that we do. So I just want to do one last call out. Is there any last burning question someone wants to ask today before we say goodbye?
All right. Well, I want to thank all of you for hanging out with us today and getting a little bit more information that hopefully you felt was a little bit more transfer specific. I do know that sometimes it feels like a lot of things are geared towards first years, but just keep in mind that you all are in a much better place than them. It might feel like you're not, but you're 2 years older. You've been doing college for 2 years longer than they have. And so even though this first quarter might feel like a little overwhelming and a little bit of an adjustment for you, you will bounce back much faster. And so I just encourage you to understand the value that you bring and see the value that you bring as a transfer student to our community. We're so happy that you're here. And if you need anything, please do not hesitate to reach out. Do not have too much pride to ask for help. Do not, don't feel embarrassed or scared or anything. Just come get help. That's what we're here for. And I wish you all the best of luck as you start your classes. And I hope we see you very, very soon at some of our events. Thanks so much for coming today.